Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, friends. Good news, it's time for some good old-fashioned, good old fun in Star Trek the original series, this time Season 2, Episode 16, The Gamesters of Triskelion. Now, full disclosure, I don't know a thing about this episode, but I've heard this title several times during my prior episode's Q&A session, so I'm really curious to see why I've heard this title so many times. But before we get into it, friends, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out the channel and it alerts you anytime we go live with Star Trek or any of our sci-fi fare. And of course, if there's anything that we do that you would like early or in its full-length format, the link to the Patreon's in the description. But my friends, all that's then. This is now, and now it's time for some Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 16, The Gamesters of Triskelion. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction, and away we go! Look at that beauty. Look at that awesome looking planet, too.
Gamma 2, an uninhabited planetoid with an automatic communications and astrogation station.
Gamma 2, uninhabited.
Find the store, Mr. Spock.
Acknowledged, Captain.
Lieutenant Uhura, let's go.
Yes, sir.
I always love watching secondary characters slide into the comm station in that respect. Awesome. The hell?
This isn't Gamma 2. Look at the color of that sky.
This is the craziest landing pad I've ever seen.
Now, that's a trinary sun.
Trinary.
Mr. Spock, the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Chekhov, they vanished.
We check your equipment, Mr. Scott. I'll scan for them on the planet's surface. Spock out.
But Captain, if we're not on Gamma 2, then where are we?
Who knows?
Kirk to Enterprise. Kirk to Enterprise.
No comms. Hey, who's this beauty queen? Oh, look at
Mine too.
everybody's got a knife.
Look,
Lasers. On stun.
What the hell is going on here? I'd be stunning the shit out of these people. Just, full
Fire.
disclosure. Or I wouldn't be. Hand to hand. Chekhov got the short end of the stick on this one. Chekhov, I hate to say that fight was over before it even began, buddy. Same with Uhura. She's 2v1. Lady Gaga. Nice. Jim's going to tell us about the final frontier, everybody. Interesting. I've seen better fight choreography, full disclosure, but I'm very interested in the episode for the simple fact there, it doesn't seem to be all one race or all one species or, we're definitely dealing with some type of conglomerate or like a, definitely not like a singular, like Klingon, Romulan type of thing. They went out of their way to make it look like, this is a varied group that we're looking at. Also, I love Kirk yelling out hand to hand and then like immediately peeling off onto the smaller of the two adversaries, leaving Chekhov. Oh, it's so great. All right, let's see. Writer and director, friends. Place your bets on director. Margaret Arman. I don't think we've had a Margaret Arman. Gene Nelson. I've never seen that name. Holy shit.
And we find ourselves on a strange and hostile planet, surrounded by creatures belonging to races scattered all through the galaxy.
Excellent, Captain Kirk.
Vlad the Impaler. Or Ming the Merciless, I should say, would be better.
Either of you hurt?
Good.
I don't think so, Captain.
Nobody's hurt, Captain. Yet.
I can see you will all prove invaluable here. I am Gold, Master Thrall of the planet Triskelion.
to welcome you.
The providers were expecting you, Captain. They arranged your transportation.
Providers.
What do they want from us?
You are to be trained, of course. What other use is there for thralls?
Now, in vampire like lore, a thrall is like a human subject that's been kind of like hypnotized by a vampire.
You are to be taken to the training enclosure. Come.
Why did we even get locked up? Was it just for this brief conversation?
We're not going anywhere till we have some information. Who are you? What is this place?
Well, he's Galt, and he's a thrall.
This place is the planet Triskelion. You are to be trained and spend the rest of your lives here.
And the universe is a strange fucking place. I like that shot with the ring. You could see the ring moving.
I've conducted 2 sweeps of the planet's surface. There is no sign of life.
And what the devil is happening?
No Sulu.
We shall continue sensor scans, Doctor. At the moment, that is all we can do, except hope for a rational explanation.
It's a weird shot, but...
I always thought that was a human failing, Mr. Spock.
True, Doctor. Constant exposure does result in a certain degree of contamination.
Open, Thrall.
Kirk. I was gonna say, those collars aren't just for show. Oh, that's a pretty cool effect. I'm actually digging Galt. I like the character design. Wonder what the symbol means. It's like a, you know, I mean, Triskelion speaks of like a 3-sided object or something, but...
Escape is quite impossible, as demonstrated by your colors of obedience. Return to your quarters.
I would like to turn my collar of obedience in for a collar of supreme napping. What say you, Lady Gaga? I actually like her weapon. It looks a bit like a coat rack, but it's kind of cool, that hook thing on the bottom. And who is that other alien species? I think I've seen them before. The yellow-skinned alien species.
I would say approximately 400.
Don't quote odds and don't give me any more dispassionate logic, Mr. Spock. Just keep looking for them.
I would welcome a suggestion, Doctor, even an emotional one.
Ah,
First time you've ever asked me for anything, and it has to be an occasion like this.
where he doesn't have an answer. Oh, I love it.
Captain, the Enterprise, they will be trying to find us, won't they?
They'll be trying, but where do they look?
How far did they get, like, transported?
This system's star is a trinary. Limits it a bit, but we're a long way from the Enterprise. If we're even in the same dimension.
Well, I mean, I guess with, you know, Mirror Mirror, I guess that's a callback to that, right?
I am your drill thrall. I am called Lars.
What do you want from her?
Hey, Lars.
Your drill thralls will attend you presently.
Drill Thrall.
I have been selected for you.
Lieutenant, are you all right?
Oh, no.
Lieutenant? Lieutenant, are you all right? Lieutenant, answer me!
Oh, my God.
What's happening to Lieutenant Uhura?
Oh, man, I was joking around before. This is, like, crazy serious now.
Is not allowed to refuse selection.
I don't like the implications of that at fucking all. Is there any way to trace this beam?
The captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov have been missing for nearly 2 hours.
We have no navigator.
Mr. Spock, I'm getting a fluctuating energy reading on this hydrogen cloud. It's faint, sir, but it consistently reads in excess of predictable energy level.
Seems to be an ionization trail.
There we go. A transport beam passing through it.
The transporter has neither the power nor the range to account for that.
Ought to follow course, Ensign Haynes.
Aye, sir.
Ensign Haynes in the Navigator.
Doctor, I'm chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl. This is the only lead we've had. Initiate. Warp factor 2.
Maybe step that up a little bit. Warp factor, like, I don't know, 6? I know I've seen that race somewhere, maybe like lower decks or something.
You are a fine specimen. I like you better than the others. If my provider is pleased, we may even be selected for each other.
I really like the way that she's playing this character, and I love the audio effect on her voice, the filter.
The provider who offers the most quatlus puts his color on us.
Our race has another name for it.
Yeah.
Slavery. Never seen a top sergeant who looked like you.
What does that mean?
Means you're a very beautiful woman.
What is beautiful?
You mean nobody's ever told you that before? Well, beautiful is,
Kirk deploying his seduction tactics.
That's beautiful.
I like that.
Your parents, where are they? Your mother and father.
She who bore me was killed in a freestyle match.
Freestyle.
You will learn all these things.
So they're gladiators. Look at that beauty. Let's jump that warp up a little bit, Spock.
Projecting back along the path of ionization, the nearest system is M24 Alpha.
That must be 24 light years away.
You're out of your Vulcan mind, Spock.
I'm suggesting nothing, Doctor. I'm merely pursuing the only logical course available to us.
By the way, if this turns out to be right, Ensign Haynes deserves the MVP of the episode because she's the one that caught this shit.
No.
Oh, fuck
It is
you,
not
man.
allowed to refuse a training exercise.
Well,
None of us will do it, Gold.
It is part of your training. The providers wish it.
The devil with the providers.
Cossacks.
Cossacks.
Flug will administer correction. Uhura, take your place on the triad.
What?
9.
Yeah.
Captain, since you assume responsibility for your people, you will take the punishment.
Yes, absolutely.
It is a shame to lose you, Captain, but it is worth it as an example to the others.
Don't sing it. Bring it. Come on, Jim. You've been in worse spots. I can't remember it offhand, but you've been in worse spots. I like how Jim turns to face him. You know, fuck you, man.
We do not know who controls it. Its dangers are abundantly clear.
If you can get into him, that whip doesn't do shit up close. It's a shame he's like 12 feet tall, though. There we go.
Hold.
Hold, what do you mean?
Rest interval 15 triseconds.
Thanks, I just get the upper hand and you're calling an end to the round. Thanks, dickhead.
Pretty fast with that whip.
This will strengthen you. Drink it.
It's a Coke Zero.
Klug's left eye is weak. Approach him from that side.
Resume places.
Why do we even go sit down? He is getting tired. Big guy like that can't swing whip too much. Nice, Jim. Nice, Jim. Nice, Jim. Look at Bill Shatner go. Oh, yeah, baby, the reverse headbutt. Get him, Bill. Nice. Keep that tension on. Don't let him up.
Provider 1 bids 300 quatlus for the newcomers. What lose? Provider 3, 400.
The newcomers have been vended to Provider 1.
We're free people.
20 Quatloos that all three are untrainable. 5,000 Quatloos that the newcomers will have to be destroyed.
Accepted. Mark them gold.
5,000? He spent 2,000 for you. They're spending 5 to say that you're not going to make it?
But I must warn you, any further disobedience, now that you are full-fledged thralls, will be punishable by death.
This is a really interesting episode.
There was no sign of them in the area of Gamma 2.
If they weren't there, it's just ridiculous to think they could still be alive, not after all this time.
In that case, Doctor, we have nothing to lose by pursuing our present course.
Yeah, don't try to mess with Spock and logic. He's gonna work it around back to his favor because that's his bread and butter.
Shauna, why do they, providers?
Shauna, I don't think I'd heard her name before.
Their voices sound mechanical. Are they computers?
Computers?
Machines.
It's very old. Does it have a name? Shauna.
That's Lady Shauna to you.
Could it have been a city for the providers?
I do not think it is well to ask such things.
A fallen civilization.
Planet?
Where I was born. Shauna, don't you ever look at the night sky?
This is the seduction tactics that Jim likes to employ.
Well, those are stars. And around them, the planets. And there are people that live on.
How can one live on a flicker of light?
And she has green eyes.
What is love?
Love. The most important thing on Earth.
We too have mates. When it is time to increase the herd, my provider will select one for me.
On Earth, we select our own mate.
I do not think your words are allowed. I have never seen them, but they are said not to be like us. They stay in...
Yeah, you're gonna get her killed.
Stop it. Stop it!
Yeah, you're gonna get her killed.
I made her talk!
This reminds me of The Cage.
You're killing her!
Oh, come on, Bill.
It's all right. It's all right. You can stop crying now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this reminds me of The Cage when Pike was trying to get information.
And this... Is this... also helping?
You could call it that.
Great line.
Please, help me once again.
Okay, friends, I'm going to put a pin in this for right now, but as we have seen in the past, this is a different take from Jim. I'm wondering if he doesn't actually have just a little bit of feelings for her.
Is it always so at the place you come from?
Captain.
Oh, Galt.
Because you have amused the providers, there will be no punishment. Return to your quarters.
All right, Galt. Galt with the Spock block. I must get back to counting things. One thrall. It's a weird kind of like spectrum of emotion on this one because it's a fun kind of episode, but also very dire.
A focused beam of extremely high intensity light was directed into the gamma system from the trinary system we are now approaching.
It's still a fancy way of saying that you're playing a hunch. Well, my hunch is that they're back on Gamma 2, dead or alive, and I still want another search.
Plum, you're wrong.
Dr. McCoy speaks for me, too, sir.
Scotty, you're wrong.
Unless it is your intention to declare a mutiny.
Mr. Spock, who said anything about a mutiny, you stubborn, pointed-eared...
You're calling him stubborn? You guys have been arguing Literally the entire fucking time.
Could you manage warp 7?
I would be more than content to do so, sir, and maybe a wee bit more.
All right, well, everybody, now if the pep talk is over. And everybody, let's not forget that Ensign Haynes is the one that directed everybody's attention to this. So...
If it were allowed, I would ask that you have another drill thrall.
I wouldn't like that, Shauna.
Don't get her in trouble, Jim. She can't do much here, man. Other than get in trouble for this, and she doesn't understand, so...
I'm sorry, Shauna.
I am too, Jim. The fuck are you doing, dude? They're gonna see you, dude, and they're gonna hit those lights, man, and that's the end of that. Nice job, Chekhov. I didn't even see that shit happen. I mean, I was gonna say, there's absolutely no way they don't know that you're walking around here. You have to fight through it. You have to fight through it and get the Galt. Cool shot, cool planet.
Standard orbit.
Ensign Haynes, I'm not forgetting.
Assuming the captain and the others are still alive.
Let's beam them up.
Well, Mr. Spock, if you're going into the lion's den, you'll need a medical officer.
Daniel, as I recall, had only his faith. But I welcome your company, Doctor. Mr. Scott, you'll be in command.
Aye, sir.
Oh, shit.
Commendations, gentlemen. Your ingenuity in discovering the whereabouts of your companions is noteworthy.
Ensign Haynes did this.
People stolen from other parts of the galaxy to fight each other, and the providers gamble on the winner.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
You present no danger while you wear the collar, and you wear it as long as you live.
Then show yourselves.
There is no objection.
We are these glowing rocks, or brains.
Power source. Shielded by solid rock.
And it's underground, like all the power sources ever.
Through eons of devoting ourselves exclusively to intellectual pursuits, we became the physically simple, mentally superior creature you see before you.
Species that enslaves other beings.
How can you be a higher intellect? Yeah.
It was hoped that such new blood would stimulate our stock of thralls. How unfortunate that you must be destroyed.
You turned the apple cart over there, Jim.
Your ship will be destroyed by a magnetic storm. No communications with your base will be possible.
My people pride themselves on being the greatest, most successful gamblers in the universe. We compete for everything.
Deal him in, it's poker time.
That with weapons of your own choice, right here now, my people can overcome an equal number of thralls set against us. We can't wager for trifles like what? Stakes must be higher.
Freedom.
The Enterprise and its crew leaves here in safety. Furthermore, all the thralls on the planet must be free. You will educate and train them to establish a normal, self-governing culture.
Thralls govern themselves?
We have done the same with cultures throughout the galaxy. Are you willing to admit that we can do something you can't? Remain here. The entire crew of the Enterprise, the most stubborn, determined competitors in the universe, will become thralls, enter your games.
As leader of your people, your spirit seems most indomitable. We suggest you alone, pitted against 3 contestants of our cruising. Because you wager your skill.
Is that an Andorian?
Thralls must stay in the blue area. You will take the yellow. An opponent must be killed to be removed from the game. If only wounded, he is replaced by a fresh one.
Jim, you're gonna have to kill him. I've already seen Jim step out twice, but... I guess you just can't go like... I was gonna say, the whip's got the range. Keep going. Look at that. Oh. That's the prick that needs to go right there. I feel bad for the Andorian because we don't really know. Oh, you got what you deserved, Lars. Nice fight. No. Oh, you fuckers, man. Do not make Jim do this.
You lied. Everything you said.
Don't make Jim do this. Jim does like her, or to the point where he doesn't want to hurt her. Maybe not. No, 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 don't. Come on. No, we...
Thrall! Surrender!
You have won, Captain Kirk.
Jesus, I think he was going to do it.
Thralls will be trained.
They will be trained. We have said it.
Pardon me if I don't trust you assholes.
I did what was necessary. Someday I hope you'll understand.
I understand. A little. You will leave us now?
Yes.
I would like to go to those lights with you. Then teach me how, and I will follow you.
Oh, that's so sad.
There's so much you must learn here first. The providers will teach you. Learn it, Shauna. All your people must learn before you can reach for the stars.
I really do think Jim cared for her a little bit. He was different with her.
Scotty!
Get me the fuck out of here. That's so sad, though. Teach me and I'll follow you. Oh. Oh, Galt took his off, too.
I will learn and watch the lights in the sky and remember.
Oh, wow. Oh, I really like that leave line. Holy shit, that was good. Oh, that was one of my very favorite leave lines that we've had in the entire series so far. All right, everybody, we just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 16, The Gamesters of Triskelion, and the only thing left to do is to talk about it. All right, everyone, just got done watching Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 16, The Gamesters of Triskelion. Boy, let's talk about that leave line, huh? Wow, that was so good. You know what? I actually feel a little bit like an asshole in this one because I was joking at the beginning. Like, I was like, it's going to be a fun episode and all everybody's, trapped and blah, blah, blah. And then it got very sinister, and I don't know. I felt like I was on, I put myself there. I put myself on uneven footing because I came into this coming right after. This is right after Trouble with Tribbles, and I guess I had myself in that kind of like comedic aspect, and then seeing how everybody was kind of like dressed and with Kirk and that stuff, it kind of got me in a weird kind of comedic headspace. But this had a lot of depth to it. But strangely enough, this had a lot of depth, there was a lot of, this is the thing, and again, I just clicked, so I'm spinning with thoughts right now. But I'm going to tell you what, I think that this is one of the really good examples of a parallel to the Prime Directive. Almost like an example, like an inner working or an example of the Prime Directive kind of in play, where it's like, you were taken. So, Jim has no kind of real application for any of this. And it's weird because they can transport, but there's no indication that the biological entities on this planet, much like Landru, much, like of the body, that type of stuff, they weren't really like spacefaring. They weren't warp capable, you know. So they're in many ways, this group on Triskelion was like pre-warp society. Despite the, you know, providers having all of this tech, the actual kind of populace definitely pre-warp. And you can argue that the providers were pre-warp too. They could beam and grab people and bring them to the planet, but it wasn't like there was a kind of a obviously they've got the tech, so it's weird, right? So we've got a kind of a weird kind of dichotomy going on the planet. This is almost like a test of the Prime Directive. Like you've been taken and you've been brought into this society, and, you know, obviously the situation is dire beyond the application of the Prime Directive. So I don't think at all that the writer was trying to, or the director, they were trying to convey that this was a Prime Directive episode by any stretch of the imagination. This is what I'm gleaning off of it, though, because this was Jim's kind of approach to helping the Prime Directive. You know, the argument could have been the way, excuse me, not the argument, the wager could have been my freedom, you know, my crew's freedom, and the freedom of all the thralls, and we're taking them the fuck with us. But he didn't do that. He didn't make that wager. He didn't say, you know, like Sean is coming with me, or, you know, he didn't say anything like that. It was, then you all train them, develop them. And at the end, that was like, you know, you're not ready for the stars. You need to learn about it, you know, because she says, oh my God, it's heartbreaking to me. It was so well delivered, and it was such a great moment for that, where she goes, take me with you. And I can't. And she goes, then teach me and I'll follow. Oh, guys, that was such a great fucking line, man, because immediately it gives such a, you feel so sympathetic for Shauna and all of the thrall that are down, the newly released and free thrall. I just really like that. I really like the way that they did that. You know, I like the way that Jim kind of stuck to his guns there, you know, because he knew these people didn't know where they were from. They didn't understand planets. They didn't understand stars. At least Shauna didn't. And I can only assume that was probably, you know, Galt might have a little bit more knowledge. It was just really, it was an interesting, and I just kept thinking of the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive. And, you know, he made sure that, you know, they were taken care of. This is definitely this, like we talk about. They had a couple instances like this in Lower Decks where, you know, they would go back to places that people had visited, and they would figure out that, you know, like Landry took over again, you know. And I always thought that was really funny, funny. Haha, it was a great but man, we really need follow up to a lot of these places. You know, we really need to check in on people to make sure that like shit didn't go back the other way, you know, which is again, I'm one of a major plot point in Lower Decks that they talk about. But I think that it was a really interesting way for Jim to approach this. And I'll say this too. Jim is a fascinating character. Jim's my guy. I mean, I don't even try to hide that. I love Jim Kirk. I love the entire crew. I mean, just full disclosure. I mean, the entire crew I absolutely adore. But you know, Jim often gets, and I learn this more now that I'm talking with everybody online and, you know, talking with my friends who have seen Star Trek. There's always kind of like a polarization, and you all would know this better because I don't have too much experience with Picard other than the Next Generation movies. I've seen season 3 of Picard. I was just watching that with my buddies and really enjoyed it, you know, but again, didn't have a whole lot of context. There's this kind of like separation where it's like on one end of the spectrum, you kind of like got like the physical gunslinger, space cowboy Kirk. And then over on the other side, from what I understand, you got like the intellectual diplomat in Picard. No less effective, very different approaches. I'm here to argue that, you know, Kirk really does show that he doesn't always have to like solve things with a phaser or a haymaker, or some type of like, you know, gambit or like some incredibly, you know, risky maneuver or something like that. You know, this was a really interesting solution to the problem that he was facing. And I really enjoyed the way that he was able to work through that in the moment and kind of come up with that on the fly when he's talking to those 3 dumbass looking brains inside the terrarium. But it was just a really interesting approach to it. And that to me, that's what the Gamesters of Triskelion is really the best thing of is that really cool way that Kirk approached what would be a Prime Directive problem. Now, in addition to that, you know, the Shauna sequence there was interesting to me because I've watched a lot of Kirk whenever his just like his right hook and his phaser and his gambits and his risky propositions, he deploys the other tool in his his utility belt is seduction, and he will use that to kind of get in the heads of people. He'll get what he needs. He'll manipulate. And I'm sure that's the approach that he was taking initially with Shauna, but at some point, especially during their run when she was like really, really hurt by the collar, it immediately started to seem more like he actually cared for her. And when I was saying in the reaction that I think he's got feelings for her, I don't necessarily mean romantic feelings. I think that was definitely a possibility. I think that he was kissing her and things like that, but I think that with Jim, Jim got a bad rap. I mean, so far, Jim's got a really bad rap. I always heard and I always thought, it was like, in fact, I think one of my friends actually said, there's the kiss of the week or something with Jim Kirk. This is way back when we were kids. And I always just thought, oh, okay. And from like my early childhood forward to like when I started watching the original series, I thought that, they would bring in, the attractive alien and then Kirk would fall in love each week. That has been absolutely not true. Does he kiss people? Absolutely. But he's doing that again as a ploy or, a device to use like his seduction. Edith is the only person that I can, from City on the Edge of Forever, is the only person that he definitely fell in love with. That, now we've heard about prior relationships that he has had with, people that we've met along the way. But again, when it comes to somebody that he's met in the moment, then we've watched him kind of have these feelings. Edith is the only one that we really have seen that. Keeler was, I mean, you could say the love of his life potentially, but yeah, I think that I'm not saying that Shauna was anywhere near that. That was developed over however long they were back there. All of those days and hours spent together with her. But with Shauna, you could see something like that, not necessarily happening, but you could see him start to care for her. Initially it was seduction, manipulation, get what you need. But then he was ready to sacrifice himself to protect her. But that, again, you could say, well, that's just Jim being the captain. He's always going to put himself in danger over anybody that he feels he needs to protect, or his crew or whatever. What do you all think? I thought I saw a little bit of something more from Jim, more than what we were normally expecting whenever he starts kissing up on people. Normally, it's you don't nearly have this level or depth of thinking about the other person, or really concern that Jim had. And that last sequence was so well done. And to me, yeah, honest to God, I can't believe I'm saying this after seeing that thumbnail of Bill Shatner in that like that leather Jean-Paul Gaultier get up that he was in. It looked very much like Sean Connery and Zardoz too, I might add. I never thought I would say this, but so far, my favorite leave line of any episode of the original series I've seen was this one. Oh my God. Just staring with the tears. So well done. What a powerful shot to end an episode on. And in many ways, a kind of a sillier episode if you just take it from like its aesthetic and, going through, these fights and stuff. And, but it wasn't. And, it has a measure of really kind of an emotional punch there at the end that I definitely wasn't expecting. Caught me for a second, it really kind of caught me off guard. And I really enjoyed that, friends. But there's so much to learn about these episodes. There's so much. We have a new director. I think we have a new writer for this one. We need to learn exactly what went on behind the scenes. And friends, you know where I'm going with this. For all of the seduction that Jim Kirk pulls out of his arsenal, our arsenal here to learn what really went on behind the scenes is only one being, and Q. Q? Greetings, mon capitaine, and welcome to another installment of a Q&A. Friends, this is where, after having watched and reacted to an original series episode of Star Trek, I like to dig a little bit deeper and find out what went on behind the camera, because as we've often said, the story behind the camera is always as interesting as the story in front of the camera. But to keep myself from wandering off into the weeds and talking for several hours, I've given myself 5 distinct categories in which to approach. The first, writer and director. who were they? The second, guest stars, did we have any? The third, of the core cast, or the big eight, who appeared in this episode? Category 4, production notes, usually the spiciest of the categories, where we find out what went on behind the cameras. And last but certainly not least, my friends, Category 5, a memorable quote from this episode. Let's get started. All right, friends, in our first category, writer and director, who were they? Well, both rookies in the Star Trek universe this go around. Our writer, Margaret Arman, did a fantastic job, I thought, and again, I kind of got lured into the idea that it was a bit comedic or lighthearted at first, but this script carried some serious weight with my favorite leave line of the entire series. More on that one below. And of course, you can't have one half of a rookie team in the writer and not have a rookie team in the director, as Gene Nelson makes his debut here for Star Trek, the original series. Again, especially in season 2, we have only had 3 directors, Mark Daniels, Ralph Sininsky, and good old Joseph Pevney. Now, all 3 of those directors appeared in season 1 with a prior episode under their belts, so to speak. Gene Nelson, this was his very first episode and the very first brand new director of season 2. Welcome aboard. Well, a little bit more about that down in production notes. Let's move on. And now for our second category, friends, guest stars. Did we have any? Yes, we did, and I decided to pick 2 of them in which to discuss. The first of which was Joseph Ruskin as Galt. Very well done. A great mixture of menacing and also of having a kind of an empathy for the character, as he himself was a thrall, and I thought he portrayed that very well. Kind of a hesitancy to do the eye thing, to cause pain to the other thrall. It was a very subtle performance, but it was very well executed. And of course, my favorite character in this episode was played by Angelique Pettyjohn as Shauna. I thought she was captivating. I thought she was very, very convincing in this almost like a naive role. It wasn't almost, it was a naive role, but played really well. Played very, almost like with a longing that I underappreciated at first and really came to love at the end of the episode. Plus, the delivery of the greatest leave line that we've had so far in the series, my friends. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Let's move on. And now, friends, for our third category of the core cast, or what we call the Big 8, who appeared. Well, let's recap the Big 8 real quick. We've got Kirk, Spock, McCoy. We've got Scotty, Uhura, and Sulu. And for season 2, we added in Nurse Chapel and Chekhov. In this episode, everyone appears with the exception of Sulu, more on that below, and Chapel. Let's move on. And now, my dear friends, for the spiciest of all of the categories, the production notes. What went on behind the camera? Well, friends, let's find out. All right, everybody, and now for our first official production note, what happened behind the camera of this episode of Star Trek? Well, Gene Nelson was the first new director of season 2 that we mentioned. Everybody else, including, Mark Daniels and Joseph Pevney and Ralph Sininsky, were all veterans of some sort, based on their prior experience from season 1, having all directed an episode in season 1. And then we all know now that season 2 consists almost predominantly of Mark Daniels and Joseph Pevney with a little sprinkle of Ralph Sininsky thrown in there. So it must have been a bit daunting too for Gene Nelson to walk into this space, this studio, with all of these people who have become so accustomed, especially recently, with working with a very select few directors. I think that might have led to a couple problems later, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's move on. And now I thought this one was really cool, friends, for our next production note. Robert C. Johnson, who was the voice of provider number 3, the third brain in the terrarium, was a very famous voice during this time. In fact, he was the voice of the Mission Impossible series, the one that asked everybody to listen to this tape before it would self-destruct. That's him. And so I thought it was very interesting that they needed some voiceover work for these 3 particular brains, but they didn't have a whole lot of time to go out and kind of listen and cast. And voice acting is difficult to cast for because you have to have certain sample sizes and stuff. It requires a lot to be able to kind of like draw, especially back then, I would imagine, without any type of digital enhancement or having to do like reel to reel or listen to somebody's catalog of clips that they had. So what they did was they went next door to Mission Impossible. They grabbed Robert C. Johnson and asked him to be a brain for a day, and he happily Agreed. Friends, let's move on. Now, for our next category inside production notes, I thought this was a very interesting one and one that was almost, not almost, I think you could say this is probably very wide reaching in its effect from this episode that I would never have known had I not read or performed this Q&A. In the future, George Takei was often asked, why wasn't Sulu developed more? And this is the response that George Takei gave. He said, you know what? They really would have developed Sulu. In fact, I had the perfect episode set up for the development of Sulu, and that was the Gamesters of Triskelion. He was supposed to have made it back from the Green Berets that he was filming with John Wayne to be the Chekhov role in this episode, where it would have been Kirk, Sulu, and Uhura that went down onto the planet, and they were the ones that were to be captured. And there was supposed to be a lot of character development for Sulu in this particular episode. It was written for Sulu to be the 1B lead in this episode. Missed opportunity, but in true George Takei fashion, I thought he said one of the nicest things potentially ever that another actor could say of a coworker or somebody that basically got a really good role that they wanted. George Takei said the following: well, things turned out pretty well instead. I got to do the Green Berets, and they rewrote all of Sulu's lines for Chekhov. So Walter got a good break. What a great way to look at it, Mr. Takei, and thank you so much for having such kind energy that you continue to display. Absolutely love it, my friends. Let's move on. Now for our next production note, friends, and this is the one I speculated on upon the delivery of this line in the episode, when Kirk says, we're not even sure if we're in the same dimension. That was supposed to carry a little bit more weight and a little bit more of a throwback because, as we mentioned just a minute ago, the landing party of this episode was supposed to be Kirk, Uhura, and Sulu. All three of those characters, now again, Chekhov did appear in the Mirror Universe, but those three characters were prominently displayed in the Mirror Universe, and that was a direct callback to Mirror Mirror, that other dimension line. So it would have weight with Uhura and weight with Sulu, even though, Chekhov should know about it too. But again, this was earmarked for Sulu, and I can't help but wonder. I really enjoyed Chekhov in this one, but what could have been, my friends? And boy, oh boy, would I like to read that original script to find out what juicy tidbits were actually in there for Sulu. Oh well, c'est la vie. Let's move on. And now for our last, but certainly not least, production note from this category, my friends. This is the very first episode of Star Trek to end not with the Desilu logo, but with the Paramount logo, because Paramount had bought Star Trek from Desilu at this time. So this was the christening of what we watch on today. Paramount Plus is where I watch Star Trek. Well, at least for now. There's an interesting merger going on in the fall of 2024, my friends. Who knows what it's called now, but as of right now, it's still Paramount. Let's move on. And now what I thought I would do, friends, is bookend the information that we had for our first-time director here, Gene Nelson, and kind of end with this. Despite having glowing praise from the creatives, coming in on time, making sure everything stayed under budget, he was not asked back. This was his one and only directorial effort for Star Trek, the original series. And again, speculation in the books that I've read and I draw my information from said that maybe it was because there was a bit of really a meshing between his directorial style and some of the cast members. However, none of the cast members had anything bad to say about him. So I think it might have been just that. It was just his directing style was a little bit different than what was needed for Star Trek. But it did produce a very good episode in the Gamesters of Triskelion. So, Mr. Nelson, thank you very much. It will be remembered. Let's move on. All right, my friends, and last but certainly not least, our fifth category for this Q&A is our memorable quote from the episode, and I'm sure you probably have guessed it by now. It is our leave line from this episode, which I believe to be probably the best one that we've had so far. It was really, really, with the possible exception of City on the Edge of Forever. But this one, friends, I thought it captures so much about what Star Trek is. That hope, that dream, that desire to reach and strive and live among the stars. And it was given to us by Shauna at the very end with that wonderfully framed shot that one-time director Gene Nelson gave us, where she says, "Goodbye, Jim Kirk. I will learn. and watch the lights in the sky and remember. Ah, haunting, my friends. Thus ends another installment of Q&A. Until we meet again, behave.